Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full video for The Boys Season 4, Episode 6. There's so many Easter eggs and references. It got so crazy. They took it so far with some of their jokes and parodies of some of these superhero characters. Like Tech Knight, for instance, is a Batman Iron Man parody. They really went for it. If you didn't watch the Gen V episodes, they get way more into his depravity. That whole tumor that forces him to want to do it with any hole that he comes across. They also confirm my big theory about Jeffrey Dean Morgan's Joe Kessler character, aka Monkey from the comics. So we will get into that too. Also, a lot of the theories about Butcher's new special power basically being a version of Venom in the Boys universe. Like Butcher now essentially has his own version of Venom, but it's evil. There were so many references and so many jokes, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. The actual episode title was Dirty Business, a reference to issue 9 of the Boys' main comic book series, also a metaphor just in general for the quote-unquote dirty business that Huey gets up to pretending to be Webweaver, aka Spider-Man in the Boys universe. They went full-on Spider-Man too, and they made all the jokes about Tobey Maguire's organic web shooter holes. They actually made jokes about that during Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness and Spider-Man No Way Home.
Spider-Man, he has the powers of a spider.
Climbs walls, shoots webs.
Yeah, bingo.
Out of his butt?
No. Oh. Well, maybe, I don't know.
Like, does it just come out of your wrists, or does it come out of anywhere else?
I don't know.
It's so cool, man. Like, I want to see the holes.
In the Boys universe, they basically reveal that Webweaver's webs come out of a hole that's near his butt. Like, it's a totally different hole, but it's kind of like they come out of his butt. I was actually blown away by how far they took some of these jokes too. The other reference to that comic book titled Dirty Business from issue 9 of the Boys' main comic book, that's also when comic book Butcher and Huey go to Tech Knight's Batman cave to try and interrogate him to get more information, which they kind of do during this episode. One of the main differences, though, with the way they do Tech Knight on the TV show is they do him more as a Batman parody. Like, they lean more into the Batman direction than the Iron Man direction, because in the comics, he does have like a full suit of armor that he can fly in, which they joke about during this episode when Homelander's like, you can't even fly. Part of the idea in the comics is that Tech Knight doesn't have actual Compound V powers, but on the TV show, they do say that he has Compound V powers, basically sensory-based powers that he uses to be the quote-unquote world's greatest detective, aka Batman. So part of the reason why they didn't do a lot of the Iron Man side of the parody from the comics is mostly just for budgetary reasons. Like, they spent most of their money on visual effects. It's already astronomically expensive to make Boys episodes. Making all those suits of Iron Man armor would just be crazy expensive. The episode starts on Butcher with Mindspace Kessler, basically his sentient tumor with Venom powers, waking him up, telling him basically what we thought in the previous episode. They saved him so that he could recreate the Compound V virus and he could use it against Homelander. Part of the problem with this, though, as Samir explains at the end of the episode, is the only way to actually make this work. Like, he could recreate it, but in order to make it powerful enough to kill Homelander, it would actually make it airborne, like it would mutate into an airborne form, killing all superheroes around the world, anybody with Compound V in their blood, including Ryan, also Kimiko and Starlight. So part of the problem with Butcher now is that he's wondering if it's worth it to kill Homelander if he also has to kill Ryan, the person that he's trying to save ultimately, and his friends, Kimiko and Starlight. Even though he doesn't tell them outright, he does think of them as friends. When Butcher's starting to realize what's really going on with this sentient tumor, the Venom inside of him that's speaking to him as Joe Kessler, it seems like he's not willing to actually do that. Like, no, he doesn't want to commit genocide. But the way they end things with that conversation when the sentient tumor basically tells him Daddy's home, they make it sound like it's going to take over his body the way it took over his mind in the previous episode to kill Ezekiel.
So don't you worry, Billy, my boy. Daddy's home.
It sounds like his Venom tumor can essentially suppress his conscious mind and take control of his body. So that might be one of his big conflicts in the next couple of seasons if he doesn't deal with it by the end of the finale, like if this pushes into season 5. And it does feel like a lot of season 4 is just set up for season 5, like the real big show is in season 5. Then we see Huey and his mother scattering his father's ashes in front of the hotel that was featured in the movie Made in Manhattan with J-Lo and Ray Fiennes because he was a super big stan of that movie. Some of the boys are there with him. It seems like his mother and him have a good relationship now. Like, if Huey survives season 5, and it sounds like he will, he does in the comics, he'll continue to have a good relationship with his mother going forward. There's a random Homelander supporter yelling at Starlight about her abortion. Then we start getting more of the Tech Knight jokes, because this is really a big Tech Knight episode. The whole thing with the Vernon prison here is that it's a privatized prison in the universe of The Boys. There are a lot of those in real life as well too. They're run by corporations, not the state, so they tend to be even shadier than federal prisons, if that's possible. But in the world of The Boys, Vernon Corp here is Tek Knight's company, like his family's company, where his billions of dollars come from, 11 generations of family wealth. Within the world of The Boys, Tek Knight's real name is Robert Vernon. So if we're talking about Batman parody here, mostly, like they're leaning more into the Batman direction as opposed to Iron Man direction, this would be like his version of Wayne Enterprises. Instead of tech that his family gets their billions from, he runs a bunch of for-profit prisons, which is very in the tone of The Boys. When he's explaining the history of his family, the history of their wealth, he says that his ancestors used to be slavers. Even the way Tek Knight explains how his privatized prisons work, like the cycle of prison, essentially, and prisoners, when they get out, they just come back in. Sort of like a revolving door kind of situation. It's like he's continuing to practice a form of slavery, just doing it in a shadier way, using the law on his side. Basically trying to show you that he's the worst person imaginable in the Boys universe, which is also true in the comics as well too. Pretty much all the Compound V superheroes in the world of The Boys are terrible people. We find out that Frenchie got sent to one of Tek Knight's prisons, and Kimiko comes to see him, but he's refusing to see anyone because he's still so remorseful about killing all those people when he was still part of the Russian mob. There are a couple of Frenchie mentions during the episode, they reference him, but he's not in this episode. Then on Firecracker's Truth Bomb show, we find out that Vought is replacing Cameron Cole's show with her new show in that time slot. She was literally one of the people who just helped the Seven kill him. The story that Vought is going with publicly is that he's taken a sabbatical. Vought does this all the time in the world of the comics, where Vought will deep six superheroes and put them in secret cryo prisons to just turn them into guinea pigs, testing tools, or anybody that they want to get rid of, essentially. Because a lot of times, instead of killing superheroes, when Vought wants to get rid of them, they'll just put them in cryo because their bodies are still very valuable tools for research. Within the context of the show, though, she then starts going on about all these Jewish space lasers, all this crazy whack job stuff that she usually gets onto. She mentions Jerry Brown, that's a real-life California politician. The RAND Corporation is like a global think tank company in real life as well, too, like it's a real-life company. Their main job is helping inform U.S. policy on like really, really big matters going all the way back to like the Vietnam War, the Cold War, the space race, like all the really major things that the U.S. government is involved in. And because she mentions this kosher company, she's trying to tie this all together as part of her whack job theory that she's selling to everyone. Very typical kind of stuff that she usually spouts on about. We get more of Mother's Milk trying to deal with his OCD using the relaxation app. That turns into a bigger thing later in the episode where he actually does have a full-on panic attack. It hurts him, he has to go to the hospital. They say that it's not as bad as a heart attack, but like the next time, it will probably wind up being a heart attack. So theoretically, it will eventually kill him if he doesn't take care of it. That's going to be his big mission for like the rest of the series. Like if Mother's Milk survives through season 5, he'll slowly have to learn to just chill out and deal with his OCD. He gets called by A-Train, who's worried about the Seven killing Cameron Coleman because they'll come for him next. And Homelander also learns that Cameron Coleman wasn't the real leak in the episode. So even though Sage seems like she might have actually learned what really went on, you have to remember that she was super dumbed down when she would have potentially seen A-Train. So I don't think she actually spotted him during the episode. But the idea is that Homelander now knows that the leak is still out there. So they will be potentially looking for A-Train. But they don't know that it's him specifically yet. He then tells Mother's Milk about Homelander's grand plan to unite all superheroes into an army and basically use them to take over America and then the rest of the world, basically turning himself into God Emperor Homelander. Like, that isn't too far off. It's also a plot line that they're borrowing directly from the comics, with Homelander basically telling all of the superheroes, like, look, it's time to take over. They want to go after Tek Knight to try and get information on more details of this grand plan because he saw Sage's book that she was showing him with Queen Maeve on it. That's basically the journal that she writes all of her notes in. We see her later in the episode scribbling more notes in that too. They learn he's throwing a Federalist Society party at his estate, which is essentially like his version of Wayne Manor because we're talking about Batman parody here. The Federalist Society is actually a real-life conservative and libertarian legal organization because Tek Knight owns the prisons. That's his connection to this group. Huey calls it like an alt-right cocktail party because it's made up of a bunch of billionaires that essentially control a large portion of the United States already. All the most powerful companies, politicians, lawmakers, everybody that you would need to take over the country, essentially. That's why Homelander wants them all. Mother's Milk wants to use Webweaver to help them get into the actual party because he knows about his connection to Tek Knight. He and Butcher also roughed him up earlier this season to try and get other information on the Seven. There were a whole bunch of jokes about catching him doing drugs, shooting stuff up his butthole, his web hole, so to speak. So part of the idea is that Webweaver is meant to be like the most degenerate person you could possibly imagine, like almost even worse than Tech Knight, because Tech Knight later then says he's going to try and elevate himself to Webweaver's level. Like, we're going to try and get on your level tonight, as if all the messed up stuff that Tech Knight does is small potatoes compared to the stuff that Webweaver gets into.
I get it. This is all a little vanilla for you.
They reveal Webweaver's real name is Patrick Whitehall. Like I said, he's Peter Parker's Spider-Man parody in this universe. Looks like he's been arrested by the feds previously for doing typical shady stuff that most superheroes in the boys' universe would get up to. Notice all the webs all over his apartment too. His medicine he brings him are just more drugs essentially. Notice when he says he's fresh out of dirt to give them on the Seven and Vought, he offers to basically suck Mother's milk off in exchange for the fix. Like, is there another way I can pay? All to set up all the Tech Knight scenes later in the episode, because the whole idea is that he was a candidate to become Tech Knight's new quote-unquote sidekick, although that really just meant becoming his new gimp. There's a pretty long scene of him trying to convince Mother's Milk to have him shove stuff up his butt. They show his actual web hole. Like I said, this is more of a joke on that Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness and Tobey Maguire Spider-Man No Way Home joke about the web holes. Like, I gotta see the holes. To his credit, Mother's Milk does wind up helping him. They put him down for the next 2 days or so, and Huey takes his Spider-Man suit to sneak into the party. Poor Huey, he is so traumatized during this episode. If he didn't have it bad before this because of his father dying, he definitely has it bad now. He's gonna need so much therapy for the rest of his life. Notice when they go to Tech Knight's mansion, they do the camera tilt, the Dutch angle. It's also meant to evoke a lot of Batman imagery, like the Gothic architecture for Wayne Manor. Inside, you see all the pictures, the decor all over the house. This is his family, ancestors, his history. It seems like they go back to England, like he said that his family used to be slavers going back 11 generations. Within the Batman comics, the Wayne family helped found Gotham back during the 1600s, I think. Basically a powerful family ruling over Gotham for hundreds of years. There's a bunch of jokes about all the right-wing politicians, all the crazy people from around the world here. Basically the richest people in the universe that are on Homelander's side now, that they feel like they can force to help them or already want to help them, like they don't need to force some of them. People that own the prisons, people that inform policy, like the Speaker of the House here, hedge fund CEOs, like the illest people you could possibly imagine. So if you ever felt like there was a secret cabal of shady billionaires, lawmakers, politicians controlling America using the legal system, this would be that version of that in the boys' universe. Secretly, though, it's Vought pulling all the strings, though, because Vought is kind of controlling everyone either through blackmail or through other financial means, just different ways that they find to control people. Homelander and the Seven show up. You might remember the Speaker of the House, who jokes with Homelander. They used the character during season 1. Madeline Stillwell used the doppelganger character to blackmail him and made him turn himself into Homelander for this freaky scene. This is probably one of the craziest things the boys has ever done. So part of the joke here is that this guy is already under Vought's thumb, technically, like Vought controls his votes. But at the time, that specific incident that when Stillwell was trying to get him to do something, they wanted to get him to vote for superheroes in the military. Notice Homelander's disgust when Tech Knight refers to himself as one of the top 2 heroes and implies that they should have a team up. That's meant to be a Superman-Batman World's Finest reference because Batman parody with a Homelander being a Superman parody. But obviously on the show, Homelander can't stand him. Like, how dare you even suggest that? I would never team up with you. You can't even fly. Like I said though, in the comics, he does have the actual Iron Man suit, so he can technically fly. Then Ashley shows up saying Tech Knight and her go way back. We obviously find out why later in the episode. She's part of his special ring of super freaky stuff that they do down in his little dungeon. Basically, his Batcave is a dungeon. Even though Sage seems really pissed off that she's there, you have to remember that she also has the Deep lobotomize her and then get it on, so she does just as much freaky stuff as Ashley is doing. So let's not judge here, no kink shaming. Everybody has the freaky stuff that they're super into. Sage even gets super horny later in the episode too. Tech Knight says his true crime detective show, The Whole Truth, got picked up for another season on Vought Plus. That's their Disney Plus parody, but it's also meant to be a joke about the Gen V spin-off TV show that debuted the Tech Knight character getting another season, like Gen V Season 2 will air on Prime Video. He explains his generational wealth, like his family history, to A-Train and Firecracker, and says the most racist stuff you could possibly say. And it seems like it doesn't even register on his face here, too, when he's telling A-Train this. Like, he's just kind of taking it all in, like, yeah, great, dude. Your family were slavers. This is wonderful. Like, what is the worst thing that Tech Knight could possibly say here? Like, how can we make this character seem like an even bigger dirtbag? They have all the jokes about Huey squeezing himself into the Spider-Man suit. They make an Elmo joke. It is weird that the suit fits him so well. The real reason Webweaver is on Tech Knight's party list is because he was applying to be his new sidekick, but is more like Tech Knight becoming his new dom. We also meet the Ladio character, who's his former sidekick, like the former Gimp that's chained to the wall here in red. That's the Boys Universe version of Robin, essentially. And just like they use him in the episode, it's the same basic idea in the comics too. Tech Knight abused him the same way when he was growing up. For a second though, when they introduced Ladio, I thought that it might actually be a joke about the Ezra Miller version of the Flash because of the red leather.
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
But they did subtitle him as Ladio, who is a character from the Boys comics and a parody of Robin. We meet Tech Knight's version of Alfred because we're talking about Batman parodies here, like Batman and Alfred. In the Boys comic book, Tech Knight winds up messing up his ear because he keeps trying to stick his junk into it too, causing him to bolt. And even though they don't explain it during this episode, they explain it during the Gen V TV show. In the comic, the reason why Tech Knight is so obsessed with sticking it in holes is because he has a brain tumor messing with his mind. Like it's the tumor itself that's causing him to want to try and have sex with everything. On the show, he does have the brain tumor, but they make it seem like he's just kind of into this in general. When Huey bumps into Victoria Neumann in the Webweaver Spider-Man costume, I think she figures out pretty quickly that it's Huey, just because she's not an idiot. But I think she doesn't really care, like she knows the boys are probably on a mission, and she just kind of lets them do their thing. She's kind of in between a rock and a hard place with Homelander and Sage, like she wants to make things better, especially for her daughter, but she also feels like she has to throw in with Homelander, or else the alternative is basically Homelander killing her. When she calls the party a CPAC nightmare, CPAC is an actual conservative political organization in real life. Homelander then explains what I said earlier, the reason why they need this group of billionaires and lawmakers, senators, politicians, the top 1% of the top 1% in America, like the wealthiest people, the most powerful people, basically needed to actually take over the country. They kind of get into the nitty-gritty of this plan later in the episode too. But a big part of it is them invoking the 25th Amendment. In the United States, that just details on how you basically replace the president for health or disability reasons in the succession that goes behind that, like how that all works out. They want to replace Robert Singer with Victoria Neumann because she is now vice president already, so she's like next in line to become the president. This is the show adapting the part of the comics where Vought essentially tries to take over the White House, but in a very different way on the TV show. Like they're making a lot of changes from the original comic book. Notice Homelander mentions Stan Edgar escaping from prison. Obviously, Victoria Neumann helped him escape. It seems like Homelander knows she was behind it, and this is part of the reason why she feels like she has to help him, like go along with this plan, because otherwise he would kill her. But I think it's also setting out the idea that we will see Stan Edgar again at some point. So for people asking if he was going to come back on the show, we'll probably at least see him either by the end of this season or season 5 if he doesn't come back by the finale. Tech Knight rattles off a whole bunch of references and Easter eggs. He says he's working on his next in-universe movie, like the fake movies that Vought makes with the Safdie brothers, who are real-life indie directors, really good directors too. They actually make really good movies. All the pictures of the flowers, the orchids on the wall seem like they're metaphors for vaginas and junks, like maybe buttholes because Tech Knight's whole obsession over holes that he can stick it in just in general. When he starts showing his books off, the Uncle Tom's Cabin book is a story all about slavery, but the whole twist here is that Tech Knight's family were slavers, so like he has it for the wrong reason. Then he shows Huey the secret entrance to the Tech Cave, aka the Bat Cave. The actual book that he uses for the secret entrance is also the Marquis de Sade book, The 120 Days of Sodom, because the Marquis de Sade is viewed as this super freaky historical figure that got up to all kinds of the stuff that Tech Knight does during the episode, and also the Sodom joke for all the butt stuff that they get up to. And they reveal that his Batcave is really more of an actual dungeon, like a full-on Saw-style dungeon that he gets super freaky in. Poor old Huey here almost doesn't make it out alive. Who knows how long Ladio's been chained up here. Then back at Vought Tower, we see the new Black Noir, who they're just calling Black Noir 2, which is a bit of a comic book Easter egg, like some superheroes have the 2 just added to their name when they become the new hero. This is meant to be the same actor who played the original Black Noir, like he's the same actor who was always under the mask, but they just never took his helmet off before this and he never spoke before this. On the show, though, the whole twist they're going with is that they just brought an actor in to play Black Noir so that the public wouldn't realize that Black Noir died. And because in-universe his whole bit is he's like a legit actor who just has Compound V powers, he keeps asking about Black Noir's motivation, like the character motivation, pointing out inconsistencies with Black Noir's backstory. He wants to quit the Seven. The boxes of Buster Beaver drawings that he found in Black Noir's closet are a callback to the animated figures that Black Noir would hallucinate. They're all from his childhood. Cirque de Vought is a Cirque du Soleil parody. They're doing a new Bee Gees musical that he wants to perform in, who will let him fly, revealing that this Black Noir, this actor, can actually fly, but they won't let him because he's playing Black Noir, and Black Noir isn't supposed to fly on the TV show. He makes a whole bunch of Branson jokes. This will remind you of The Simpsons. Basically, in Missouri, Branson is like Vegas if it were run by Ned Flanders.
Branson, Missouri. My dad says it's like Vegas if it were run by Ned Flanders.
Andy Williams!
Then we get a whole conversation from the Deep explaining his history with the original Black Noir, telling him about a mission they went on for Vought to take a bunch of land from locals so that Vought could expand its food business, revealing that killing people made Black Noir super horny. Then the Deep starts to metaphorically go off the deep end, saying violence is power, implying he's getting way more twisted, so we'll see where they wind up taking the Deep's character this season and next season. It seems like he's getting way darker. Back with Butcher, notice next to him there's this Black Noir anti-union poster, like unions are bad kind of poster. There's also a poster for Crimson Countess nearby too that tries to warn people not to steal. Basically like the worst working environment you could possibly imagine. He keeps hallucinating Becca, who seems like she's meant to be like the metaphorical angel on his shoulders in the Kessler character, because now it's confirmed that it's the sentient tumor with the Venom powers is more like the devil on his shoulders telling him what to do. When she says killing one Homelander just to end up with another, the fear is that Ryan would potentially turn into the next Homelander if he does wind up going evil. The boys break into Tech Knight's mansion. Victoria Neumann also imagines popping her own head because she hates talking to the Speaker of the House so much. Like she'd rather kill herself than have to talk to him anymore. This was actually in the trailer too. People were like, wait a minute, does she die in this episode? Or is this just like an imagined thing? Or is this somebody else's power just making it seem like this? Question now answered. It was just meant to be a funny moment with her imagining popping her own head. When she starts making fun of the senator, saying how terrible he is to Sage, the reason why Sage kind of quietly laughs under her breath there is because she knows all about the plot that Vought used to blackmail the senator, winding up in bed with the doppelganger character. Remember, Sage basically knows everything there is to know. So it's basically meant to be a joke about how the senator is also lying and is just as dirty as anybody else out there, kind of like real-life politicians. Sage gives us more of her backstory. She says when she was 11, she had her compound V powers, her grandmother got a really aggressive form of cancer and was about to die, and because her powers basically make her the smartest person on the planet, she found a way to cure cancer, but because she was a little kid in black, none of the doctors or the scientists would listen to her, and none of them actually cared about saving her grandmother. So basically, she grew so disillusioned with society, it's part of the reason why in present day, she's helping Homelander take over the planet. It's part of the tragedy and the joke of the Sage character in general. Like, what does it matter of you being the smartest person in the world if nobody ever listens to your plans? Like, it essentially makes you worthless. Part of the reason why she agreed to help Homelander is because he said he would listen to her, but they're teasing a lot of tension between the two of them in previous episodes. Like this episode, Homelander seems like he's going to be super pissed off at her because she wasn't able to help him in the moment. And also you have characters like Firecracker trying to throw Sage under the bus and drive a wedge between Homelander and her. So it just seems like they're hyping up some kind of civil war inside the Seven in the next season. For those of you wondering if Sage was going to develop some kind of contingency plan to get rid of Homelander, if Homelander ever did something to try and kill her. The butler brings that chocolate cake for all the weird messed up games that Huey plays with Tech Knight. Ashley shows up for the real party in the dungeon, and they get up to pretty much all the illest stuff you could possibly imagine, like the grossest, most degenerate stuff you could think of. They even give Huey a piece of sandpaper to clean his butt up. Yikes. We get another conversation between Mindspace Kessler like the sentient tumor and Butcher. The way they're using this conversation though, it's sort of Butcher being confronted with his own darkness, like how dark is he willing to go? But part of the idea is that it isn't just Butcher talking to himself, like the actual sentient tumor is talking to him as a separate entity. It's just taking the form of Kessler to do this. Tech Knight then implies that some of the other conservative politicians, rich people, will come down to the dungeon soon to get in on the really freaky stuff with Huey, which isn't that big of a surprise. Ashley gets her own special dom suit. We've actually seen her wear versions of this in previous episodes too with Cameron Coleman. They joke there's a safe word, Huey has no idea what it is. Later in the episode, they reveal that it was Zendaya. It was meant to be Webweaver's favorite thing. That was his safe word. I think part of the joke there is that it's more of a reference to the Spider-Man Tom Holland era, because Zendaya is a version of MJ during those movies. Making as many Marvel Spider-Man jokes as possible. You start to see Firecracker freaking out in the bathroom here. I think this is a combination of the medication that she's on. We learn about that later in the episode. Don't worry, I will talk about that because that is super freaky. But it's also the fact I think that none of the other Seven seem like they really care about Firecracker or want her there. When she tells Starlight Homelander's gonna laser her tits off, that's a Stormfront joke because Homelander actually did that during season 2, or he tried to do that. Tech Knight then uses his Compound V powers to deduce that it really is Huey. He reveals Tech Knight was one of his favorite heroes as a kid. I don't know if that's true or if he was just saying this in the moment to try and get him to stop. It basically reveals that he's gonna cut a new hole, or holes multiple, into Huey and start doing him in those. We get that scene with Mother's Milk and Kimiko catching Sage scribbling more notes in her Queen Maeve book, more about her grand plan. She implies that she's figured out what's going on with his daughter, but I think what's going on here is that she's pulling the same trick on Mother's Milk that she did with Homelander earlier this season, just deducing their entire life, Sherlock style, by looking at them. That's part of her ability. The reason why she's talking so quickly here is that she's trying to induce a panic attack in him. He winds up shooting her in the brain, but remember, her brain heals, so she'll be fine shortly. She's just going to be dumb for a couple hours, which they use for some comedy later in the episode. Kimiko gets A-Train to help. When he shows up, though, you see that Sage has already left. Part of the idea, I think that she's so dumb now, like she's been dumbed down so much that she couldn't tell that A-Train was helping them, so she won't remember that after her brain regenerates. So at least for right now, A-Train is still safe. But he runs Mother's Milk to the hospital and winds up getting the validation from the little kid who thinks of him as an actual superhero. Like, this is the thing that A-Train wanted his whole life, to be an actual hero that people looked up to. Homelander then figures out what happened with Sage being shot in the head, being dumbed down. She goes on about wanting candy, then some Taco Bell, getting super freaky, like she gets super horny, like she wants Taco Bell and to get it on. Then Homelander goes full Thanos, doing it himself.
I'll do it myself.
Fine. I'll do it myself.
He basically gives all these rich people their big pitch on the coup d'etat, taking over the office of the presidency, turning Victoria Neumann into the new president. Part of the funny reaction here, too, is that the rich people aren't, like, really stupid. They're like, no, don't give us the boogeyman stuff. What are your actual details of how you plan to pull this off? Give us the nitty-gritty details, day-to-day, how this is going to work. They kind of got into this in a previous season when Homelander tried to take over Vought as a company, as the CEO. He was terrible because he's an idiot. He has no idea how to run a company. There's no way he would be able to ever run a country if he were to try to be an actual president. Thankfully, because Victoria Neumann is a politician, as shady as ever, she's super quick on her feet and can waffle her way to explain winning these people over. The funny sidebar on her plan, too, is that she doesn't really give them an actual plan. Like, she doesn't give them the details that they ask for. She just kind of spouts off a bunch of talking points like, we won't regulate your companies, you can do whatever you want. You also see Homelander's brain slowly breaking a little bit more while this is happening, too, because he can't handle all these really specific details. Normally, it would be Sage to answer all these specific questions, but currently she's dumb as rocks for the next couple of hours, just stuffing cake into her face. Probably one of the funniest moments in the episode, besides all the crazy Huey stuff, like the WTF funny stuff, was when Victoria Neumann then looks at Sage and starts nodding at her, and they're nodding back and forth for a while, and she has no idea what's going on. You have to remember that Sage is super horny, so she probably thinks that Victoria Neumann is trying to come on to her, and they want to get it on. Like, oh yeah, so she's nodding to her like, yeah, let's go do it. Victoria Neumann has absolutely no idea, though. Like, oh, okay, sure, whatever, okay. And eventually Victoria Neumann just gives up on her because she's being an idiot. But essentially, Victoria Neumann conveys the basic plan to turn America into an actual dictatorship with zero regulation on big business. And they're going to control people like subjects, basically. Starlight and Kimiko break in to help Huey in Tech Knight's dungeon. He implies that he's been fantasizing about Starlight becoming his new dom. Then the obvious joke is that because he's a huge masochist, it's really hard for them to actually torture him for information because he wants them to actually do this. Revealing the real way to piss him off because he's a billionaire is to give his money away to groups that he hates. It's really Black Lives Matter that actually gets him to talk because remember, his whole thing is that his family are super racist, a la slavers. He reveals that Homelander and Sage wanted to use his prisons to keep anyone who stepped out of line, powerful people in positions of authority, if they didn't comply with their plan. Basically creating government-funded internment camps, like the worst possible thing you could imagine. There are a couple funny moments with his butler who betrays him, saying that even all the terrible stuff he did his whole life was bad, he was willing to go along with it, but the line that he draws is the prison camp, like that's it, and strangles him. The whole David Carradine joke is a rumor about the actor in real life that he died during an accident trying to autoerotic asphyxiate himself. I already explained the Zendaya joke too, that's just like a Spider-Man Tom Holland joke. Then if all that stuff wasn't super messed up enough, they have that scene with Firecracker and Homelander that just takes it way beyond this, like one of the most WTF endings they've had in a while since Madeline Stillwell was on the show. She basically becomes the new Madeline Stillwell. She reveals everything that happened at the party. Starlight the boys showed up, Tech Knight's death. She also lets Homelander know that Cameron Cole wasn't the leak, so now they're going to be looking for someone like A-Train. They don't know that it's A-Train, but they'll be looking now. And she winds up winning him over by revealing that she did one of the most messed up things ever, basically taking that medication that Frenchie found for a long period of time to induce breastfeeding so that she can breastfeed Homelander, basically the thing that he's been looking for so long. Like, he doesn't care about her at all. Like, he's not sexually into her, but the minute she squirts him, he absolutely flips it. The look on his face is so messed up and so hilarious at the same time. When she says the medicine that she had to take enlarges her heart a little bit, that might actually lead to her eventual downfall. Like, she might be killed by some kind of heart condition she develops because they continue to do this kind of messed up stuff. So when I say that she essentially becomes the new Madeline Stillwell, she's basically going to be nursing him on the regular now. Like, you have to imagine that she's probably going to move into his apartment because he's going to want to do this all the time. Back at the boys' office, even though I want to laugh at all the stuff that happened to Huey, he does seem like he is scarred for life, like he's going to need therapy for the rest of his life. You feel so bad for him at the same time. Butcher then brings Samir more tools to replicate the Compound V virus. The French bloke that he mentions was Frenchie. And I already explained what Samir says to him here about the actual weapon, that in order to make it work, it would mean killing all superheroes, even Ryan, even their friends like Starlight, Kimiko. The bigger part of the scene here, though, is that Butcher realizes what's actually going on with the sentient tumor with the Compound V powers, basically the Venom creature living inside him. This is meant to be based on a comic book plot. In the comics, there is an actual tumor that gets Compound V powers and becomes sentient. They're kind of playing him and Becca as sort of like the devil and the angel talking on Butcher's shoulders, but in the case of the Venom tumor, it implies that it's also going to be running the show, like it's going to take over his mind and will be controlling his body, doing all these things. So I think that's the real threat for Butcher for like the rest of this season and during season 5 too, is will it be Butcher calling the shots, doing all these terrible things, or will he be able to overcome the tumor itself? Part of the idea, I think, is that he won't be able to get rid of the tumor without actually killing himself either. Everybody post all your theories about that in the comments below. If there are any other Easter eggs and references that you spotted in the episode that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. It was so messed up, but hilarious at the same time, like what you would expect from the boys. R.I.P. to Tech Knight, you are the biggest degenerate ever. My full episode 7 video will post next week after they release it. There's also a bunch of big stuff happening too. My House of the Dragon Season 2 Episode 4 video will post on Sunday after they release that. Everybody click here for all my boys episodes, and click here for that new House of the Dragon Season 2 Episode 4 video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.